in my judgment, we have to recognize the fact that this is an egregious violation, if you will, of treaty commitments, a solemn obligation on the part of the Russian government to recognize the boundaries of the newly independent states of the old Soviet Union and of the Warsaw Pact. And that was one of the most significant developments in the 20th century, and Putin is simply ignoring all of those commitments. I don't think he should be able to do that without paying.
But as you know, in Georgia, the people will make the case that Russian troops remain, and that it was a very different situation because we did not or were not able to respond.
Right.
So what is that lesson of that?
Well, the lesson
in
of
your
that,
own administration.
The lesson of that, I think, it came at a time sort of at the end of the Bush administration, beginning of the Obama administration, but it was a deep concern to our friends in Western Europe. We did take some steps in terms of providing assistance to Georgia. We had ships in the region and so forth. So there were steps taken, but they weren't effective in terms of driving Putin out. And part of the problem in that case, there was a question about who actually provoked whom with respect to the Georgians.
Do you believe sanctions will be enough?
I don't know. I don't have any way to evaluate.
Who gives a fucking shit what this fucking war criminal
How much of a confrontation
thinks?
does the United States want to engage in on the ground?
How much? The real question is how much do you want to allow Putin to ignore those agreements, very, very important agreements that ended the Cold War, led to the reunification of Europe and the liberation of millions of people from under the boot heel, if you will, of the Soviet Union. That was one of the most significant events of the 20th century. And now he's starting to chip away at that. He's trying to reverse those developments very clearly with respect to Crimea. And I do not believe that we should allow him to do that.
But the question then is, if you do not believe we should allow him, what are we prepared to do to stop him?
Well, that's the key question. But
and what's your answer then?
And my answer is reinstate the ballistic missile defense program in Poland. He cares a lot about that. Conduct joint military exercises with our NATO friends close to the Russian border. Offer up equipment and training to the Ukrainian military. Take steps that will guarantee and convey the notion, especially to our friends in Europe, that we keep our commitments. So far, that's in doubt.
What a disgusting
And I think it's much a matter of sending a strong signal that the U.S. will keep its commitments to our friends and allies. That's been in doubt for some time now because of the policies of the Obama administration. And this becomes a crucial moment.
So you think those nations, and those Baltic nations, should be nervous as to whether NATO and their members of the NATO alliance will come to their defense?
Yeah, we have a treaty obligation under Article 5 of the NATO treaty to attack against ones and attack against all. And we absolutely, I think, will find if you go to Lithuania, Latvia, Estonia today, that our friends there recognize they've got Russian minority populations inside. They were under the control of the old Soviet Union for decades, and now they're free and independent states, but they depend upon the United States for leadership and guaranteeing their
So what happened if the Crimeans say we want to join Russia?
I don't know. We'll have to see what happens with that. Obviously, there's an argument about whether or not they can do that, given among other things, the Budapest Memorandum in 1994.
And of course, the Russians say that there was an unconstitutional coup in Kiev.
Right. So there's a debate, obviously, underway, and I don't know how it's going to unfold. But I think Putin is. I think he's got domestic problems at home. I don't think that this is a situation where there aren't vulnerabilities from the standpoint of the
But there's also the energy weapon, too. I mean, can we, in a sense, provide the money and the energy to the people in Ukraine, so that therefore they'll feel less pressure from Russia?
Energy is also a weakness for Russia. They depend on energy, on petroleum, for 50% of their GDP. If the price of oil drops a few dollars, they go into recession. It accounts for most of the budget in the Russian government. So for him to begin talking about cutting off sales, that's a two-edged sword. It does not necessarily mean that it's going to create a bigger problem for the customer than it does for the supplier.
We could be looking at a new Cold War.
Well, I don't know that it'll go that far, but I think there should be no doubt in anybody's mind that the United States is going to do everything we can to mobilize NATO, our Western European friends and allies, to make certain that Putin gets the message that this kind of behavior is unacceptable and won't tolerate it, and he can't do it without paying a price.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President.
Yes, sir, Charlie.
Good to see you.
Fuck
Join us now from
you.
Sea Island, Georgia this morning, Republican Congressman Paul Ryan. Good morning, Congressman.
Morning, Charlie. How are you doing?
You heard what the Vice President said. Do you agree with him?
Oh, of course he does.
I do. I think